I actually had this great conversation with this woman who's studied the Kabbalah for like 40 years, and she's a engineer for NASA. So she's like a rocket scientist that understands like spiritual wisdom.
Okay, so she's definitely played in the intellectual realm.
Yeah. And she shared with me that when light hits a surface at an angle, it produces more energy than direct. And this is such a law of correspondence, how little things microscopically is how big things, the universe works, right? So when you go things at things at an angle, you actually produce more energy, right? And again, those that have architected our control mechanism society, they know this, right? Which is why we've been taught when you want something, right? You set the direct goal, the smart, simple, measurable, realistic time frame. You go at it directly.
Oh yeah,
because that way of doing it traps you in the forever loop. Right? It keeps you on the hamster wheel. It keeps you on the pendulum. We were never taught how to go at things obliquely, right? How do you set a peripheral attention or goal that guarantees the thing that you actually want? And this is totally doable in every which way. And it doesn't take any additional effort. It's just a completely different paradigm, right? And so in the course, the easiest one for people to really grasp is, and we kind of talked about it, when I was here, right? If you have a direct goal of like losing 10 pounds, right? You're always met with the opposition of you're 10 pounds overweight, right? You're just faced with that. Every time you're like, I got to lose 10 pounds.
Yeah.
You're reminding yourself you're 10 pounds overweight and you feel all of that. However, if you make an intention to be even more connected and mindful with food, right? The study showed that's called mindfulness eating. And now granted, you are now on the pendulum of connection with food, but at least you're not on the pendulum of losing 10 pounds. And all the studies show that if you are setting the intention to be more mindful of food, you eat slower. Because you eat slower, you're going to feel full before you finish your food, which means you'll eat less food, which on average, based on research, you lose 10 pounds. Right? So that's an example of you can set the intention to be more mindful with food and you're guaranteed the 10-pound weight loss without ever thinking about 10 pounds weight loss. And so to directly answer your question, it becomes a fascinating approach in life to ask yourself, right? What is the thing that I can focus on in the story and the relationship to that thing that guarantees me this other thing that I want in a way that reveals who and what I am even more? Just imagine like people approach all things in life with this inquiry that I believe they wouldn't need any meditation, plant partners, or mechanism because they're living in a constant context and game and process of revealing who and what they are really.
This could change this will change this mindset, the entire weight loss industry.
Yeah.
Like think about back in the day when Weight Watchers came. I think Weight Watchers was 70s or 80s. I believe it was. And all the women would watch the woman step on the scale and like, so I'll feel her pressure. She might have starved herself. What a terrible way. I'm sure they had good intentions. I'm not here to like cap on Weight Watchers. But man, this is the opposite of the curious questioning. This is a pressure vacuum that really just unconsciously blocks people from getting the thing that they actually desire. So it's the mental flip. So how can we extrapolate this? Like, how can we reveal the deepest aspect of ourself in the curious questions? Is it that exact mantra, or are there other ways to get about it?
Yeah. Again, whenever I get a question, I always think about what's the context in which that question exists in, and do we need to update the context first?
Okay.
Right? And so in this case, I think there's an opportunity to reveal the bigger context. And the bigger context that most inquiries happen within, the bigger context is there's something wrong and there's a problem.
Yes.
And so the inquiry is about solving that problem or fixing the thing that's wrong or getting there that you're not there yet. And so recognizing that, I always say, well, the first thing is let's operate within the context of you are already there, that there is no problem to fix. And then from that place with curiosity and wonder, you go, who and what am I? And you go, okay, let's say, I don't know, I want a steak dinner tonight. And you go, okay, how am I going to get a steak dinner? You can literally apply this exact thing that we're talking about to like making a steak dinner appear in front of you. You could apply to like, I'm going to take a shower in 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be these grand things like I'm going to build a big business is what I'm saying. You can apply this process to like the most mundane things. Like, how do I create the story in which I'm relating to this? I'll give you an example in the workout space. When I was younger, like most people, I worked out because I didn't like my body and I wanted to change it. Right. It was still the problem, not there yet context.
Were you overweight or you just didn't feel like you had enough muscle at that time?
The story was I was picked on for being Asian in America. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to build myself up to essentially feel safer. Right. And the other, I always tell people, especially guys, I feel like every young kid, male that starts working out, there's a percent of the why is to appeal to the opposite sex. Of course, there was that.
Sure.
Right. And so that was the reason for decades, right? For me, weightlifting and bodybuilding, all the things. And now when I go and do movement, it's funny. I used to listen to like Metallica, right? To like get the energy going. Now I listen to like these spiritual songs, and I'm basically seeing how much love can I infuse into my muscles and connect to the muscles as I'm working out. So it completely changes the relationship. It's like I wonder, what can this muscle do in this moment? What can it feel like in this moment? Versus I need to change this muscle from A to B.
Yeah.
Right. So this is an example of completely changing a relationship to a daily activity that will reveal so much more about yourself versus the problem solution context.
How have you applied this? It's really like a curiosity framework.
It is.
How have you applied this to finance? The money wound in the world for me was huge.
Yeah.
I can remember, Stephen, my parents saying some pretty hardcore things about rich people.
Yeah.
Rich people are bad and money doesn't grow on trees. My very first talk I ever gave, 2017, I was like, yeah, there's this radio player in the background that always says people can't be trusted, expect the worst to happen, and money causes pain. These were some serious unconscious frameworks for me that I've unpacked over, almost a decade now.
Yeah.
But it's so hard for people that are really broke. Like I think of somebody in let's just say impoverished Mexico or South Central Los Angeles, like the economic disparity in that vibration is so, it's like a vortex. And if they don't have an awakening to remove themselves from the vortex, they could potentially choose that timeline and just get stuck there forever. Can you speak to that person if they're here? Yeah. They're listening?
There's an interesting, I would say my story around this is this. Every question or every situation, I tend to unpack from a dualistic and a non-dualistic perspective. Right. The dualistic means there are actually other people. In the non-dual, I'm the only I, and everyone is just one. Right. And they come with very different perspectives and different stories. And so I'll unpack your question from a dualistic first, and I'll go to non-dual just to sort of illuminate both sides. In a dualistic perspective, I have a story that many people incarnated to experience poverty because they potentially had so many lifetimes where they lived as a king and they were rich and they had everything taken care of. The reason I go with this story is, if not, then we're still operating in there's a problem to fix. And now we're pulled back into that reality. And then the moment we jump into there's a problem to fix because of the law of correspondence, we must manifest even more problems in the world. Right? So to see the world as whole brings wholeness to the world. Right. And then, I'll give an example. I've had memories of previous lives where I literally was in London stabbing people to death, especially women. In this lifetime, when I treated 9,000 patients, as I reflect back, most of the people that got the biggest life-changing benefits were women. I believe it's because I've incarnated to experience the other side of this, right? From hurting to supporting. Right? Because we're all here to experience a totality of reality. I call it both sides of every pendulum. And so I just want to give that context. So I have a story that, people who are living in poverty. I mean, I lived in poverty when I came to the US, we literally picked from the trash for furniture. We had no money whatsoever. Right. And so I believe that there are people who are in this lifetime that can swing from poverty to wealth. There are certain people in this lifetime that are just choosing just to stay in poverty. There are certain people that incarnate with wealth and have more wealth. There's people that incarnate with wealth and then end up in poverty. There's so many ways to play this game, right? And so I just honor the game that the other is playing, and then love and exemplify pure expression of love as I interact with them versus I need to help them. Does that make sense? It's like a different vibration.
Yeah, it's one viewpoint.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's sort of and for anyone that's listening, I'm not saying like, hey, you deserve poverty. I'm saying my story, my opinion is that you incarnated to experience what that feels like. And of course, you are a divine being. You can choose out of that if you want. We can kind of talk about what that's like.
Sure.
And then from a non-dual perspective, there's no other human. It's just me. Every other is really just a projection of me. And so what that means is if I see someone, let's say that's living in poverty, the first thing I would do is check in, what is the story and the feeling and the emotion that I'm experiencing as I'm observing that? Because that actually doesn't exist. This is just an awareness of who and what I am. Right. So if I'm feeling sorry for that person, then there's something for me to feel into that. If I'm feeling better than them, then there's something for me to become aware of that. So
what if you're just feeling compassion?
Then there's something to be aware about compassion.
What would one get to be curious about if they're feeling compassion for somebody who's struggling financially?
Well, I think our observation of this fictitious external world is all just a mirror, right? For us to know ourselves even more. Where are we at right now? So if someone is feeling compassion, amazing. What that typically tells me for someone that's feeling lots of compassion, it tells me that they've spent a lot of time, enough time, and it's time to get off the duality of healing and wounding. One of the benefits, the oblique benefit of the healing wounding polarity is you learn tremendous amounts of compassion. Mm-hmm. Right. So whenever I talk to people that are on the healing wounding cycle, I ask them like, how are you feeling about your mastery of compassion? And basically the advice is that if you feel like you've got compassion down, I'm like, great, it's time to exit the healing wounding cycle and play a different game.